not me, is it?
What is up, all you beautiful people? Welcome back, Triple T number 46, November 15th, 2022. Who'da thunk it, who'da thunk it? And coming to you live from Texas, where it is late fall, early winter, and the coldest part of winter, even though I'm from Minnesota, then is the front side of winter, because on the front side of winter, 40 degrees is a tad chilly, Back half of winter, especially in Minnesota, 40 degrees means you're in a tank top, shorts, and sweeping the slush off your sidewalk, going, it is a beautiful day. For those of you joining in on the recording or watching this, I appreciate you joining. My name is TJ Zebel. I call myself a professional problem solver. And yes, I got a bunch of wallpaper and all this stuff, but that doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't get it out your head and back out to help people. And that's the whole thing about Triple T, Talk Time with TJ, is I'm here to share whatever's been put in my brain. Hopefully it benefits you and you can share it with others. And we go for 1 hour. And then the second hour is open mic, open platform for anybody that has any questions of any sort. No question is too dumb. Even if you can't spell NLP, you're welcome here. I also forgot to put this out a couple of times. I do offer a free 30-minute consult for anybody that wants to just chat about anything, or if you want some help with some of the topics that we talked about, or any of the above. And if I'm a fit, we'll work together. If I'm not, I have a lot of colleagues that I would gladly refer you to make sure that you get the help and the answers you're looking for. That being said, 2 minutes of blah, blah, blah. Let's get on with the show. And for those of you watching the recording thinking, yes, all of us. The recording, ironically, and I haven't figured out how to do it yet, only shows the people that have their mics or the cameras on, even if they've got a little icon. And the other people are sitting in the darkness. But I'm glad you're here anyways. So, anybody got anything to share from their week or ahas and epiphanies they had after we shut down last week? Yes, Lenora.
Question for later, because something was coming up about forgiveness. And then I guess it might have been the state that I was in, but all my understanding about forgiveness kind of had gone out the window. So if we can wrap back around to that one, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, put a pin on that and stick it in the monitor so you remember.
I'll just put a shout out. I kind of already said this to those who were here earlier, but just the importance of the how do you eat a whale or an elephant or whatever, one bite at a time. I cannot count how many times that kept me going this week. So highly recommend that.
Yay! It is so easy to become overwhelmed on almost any size project, depending on what's going on in your life and how much bandwidth you have available to you. And, it just, you gotta figure out ways to help yourself stay focused, even if it's setting your priorities per half hour. It gives you a way to focus your energies and move forward. And I want to say a quick hi to Guada and Elijah joining us. Thank you for popping in. Anybody else got anything, or we'll get bounding on to the topics that presented themselves this week, because I've got a feeling these are gonna, well, we'll see. As with all of ours, we'll see how many squirrels show up and how many I can contain. So the topics that popped up for this week's discussion, number 46, are you winterized? Herpes and holidays, and the power of why. I saw some looks. Apparently some people didn't see the Facebook post, and you're like, what? Yes. Are you winterized? Well, this is going to be a combination of all sorts of stuff from the world of TJ. With winter coming on and hitting some parts of the world already, well, we'll have some people hopefully tuning in from Australia. They're going into summer. But for those of us that are living in the States and not living in San Diego anymore, winter has made its presence known to be coming up soonly, and fall is deciding to show us more of the winter side. So for the last week or so, I've been working my butt off around our property trying to get ready for winter. And it made me wonder, with the classes that I've taught on house home maintenance, even in rentals, apartments, townhomes, things of that nature, there are things that you want to pay attention to when the weather is ready to drop. Things such as hose bibs outside. Do you have the frost-free style? Do you have the old traditional style? Do you have your garden hoses taken off of the hose, drained, and put in a place where they can survive the winter without being full of water? Do you have, now they have these easy to attach covers for your hose bibs to give them extra insulation. If you've got plants or a yard or something, have you fertilized them? Have you prepped them up, trimmed them back, gotten them ready for the winter? Your car. How many people have winter tires for their car? Good answer. When I was managing a tire shop, you'd be amazed at the amount of people. Well, I have all season radials. I'm like, yes, that's a great advertising marketing ploy. And all season radials are perfect for San Diego, lower parts of Texas, and some parts of Florida. Other than that, if the part of the problem is people want easy cheesy, one size fits all, and they want high mileage, and they want good traction. The problem with those, especially with dealing with tires, is in high mileage, typically the rubber is a little harder, which doesn't boast well when the temperatures drop and you're on snow and ice. Snow and ice usually require a softer rubber compound, lots of siping, which wears out quickly in hot temperatures. Has everybody had their antifreeze checked? Yeah, I saw a few faces going, oh, there's that. Yes. Definitely got to get that checked. So it's things like that have to be done for the living area around us. Now, for the living area inside of us, wintertime typically means more time spent inside, windows closed, house boarded up, furnaces running, less sunshine, and they think it's this magical phenomena that they think that it's this magical phenomena that cold weather is why people get colds and flus. Not so much. A lot of it is because we've sealed up our houses. We're not out in the fresh air getting fresh oxygen and sunshine to help boost our vitamin D and immune systems. A lot of people forget to change their air filters. So another one, if you haven't changed your air filter for a while, might be a good time. It's even more important now than in the summertime. Because in the summertime, yes, we tend to open up the doors and the windows and all the pollen gets in and we get the dust in and everything. But along with that, we're also bringing in fresh air. Wintertime, somebody opens up the door and everybody in the house looks at him like, shut the door, it's cold outside. We also need to pay attention to, again, the fact that we're all bundled up and we're going out into public to interact with humans in their natural environment, where we now have a number of other people and commonality places and shopping places like that that are also closed up, sealed up, without getting that fresh air running through. And we're getting less sunlight. So again, watch your vitamin D levels, your activity levels. I'm just as guilty. I tell you what, as soon as daylight rip-off time kicked in and the days got shorter, oh, look at it. Aaron's here. And I started noticing, instead of wanting to work till 8 or 9 at night, now about 6:30 kicks around and it's dark out and my brain is going, time to stop for the day, time to go night-night. And about 9 p.m. kicks around and I am toast. Not even buttered. Just saying, a little crispy sometimes. You're welcome. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of times we don't think about prepping ourselves for the changing seasons. Now, Aaron is a good one here because he's moving in. You guys are in late spring now, moving into summer.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and so now you get to start enjoying the long days and getting things done and having the windows open and fresh air in the house and catching some sun. And do you recall what you did for prepping for winter all these few short months ago? And are you doing
Probably
anything?
nothing.
What's that?
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing, like the rest of the world.
Uh-huh. I'm always ready for winter.
Yeah, well, growing up in Minnesota, where we get the extreme weather, it taught me you definitely have to think ahead and prepare for it. Um, sure enough, there was always one house that they forgot about prepping the pipes. We get a good hard freeze, about 20, 30 below Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius, but it basically is. And somebody's pipes would freeze and bust. And then you trying to fix water lines when it's 10, 20 below. And it can get really expensive. Or they would they'd go out, start their car, and something would sound really weird because they forgot to make sure they had proper antifreeze, and the motor froze and cracked the block. So wanted to make sure that all you peeps were aware of that. Make sure you take care of yourself, and if nothing else, you can arrange for a vacay down under. Enjoy this summer. I might have to do that. It's a good idea. Yes. So.
Wasn't there a technique where Dr. Dawn, she mentioned about standing in front of a window in the winter in the cold for like 10 minutes or something like that to help build your immune system? That was one of the things that she had said to like prep your body. Right? I'm not making stuff up. This is like archives though. This is like 2012.
And I'm trying to remember exactly how it went, but yes. And luckily for them, they're still in San Diego, where people, you can always tell the tourists in San Diego, because the people who grew up in San Diego are dressed like Nanook of the North, and they've got their dog is in a all wrapped up and wearing a parka and everything. And there's the tourist from Minnesota, shorts, flip flops, and a tank top, going 50 degrees out. It is freaking awesome. Catching some rays. Mm-hmm. I was working at an apartment complex for a bit, and it was funny because about mid-January, the day temps were mid-50s. And I looked out by the pool, and there's a couple. He's in a Speedo, and she's in a two-piece bikini, catching some rays. I couldn't help myself. I had to walk out there, and I said, "Hey, you guys having a good day?" "Yes, we are." "I'm just curious, so where are you all from?" "Oh, we're from Switzerland. We are just on vacation visiting the friends." I said, "Yeah, I knew you weren't from around here, and it's not because of your accent, because everybody who lives around here is dressed up like they're in Antarctica." "Yeah, we thought that was a little strange. We saw somebody walking by. They was wearing the heavy winter coat." Like, yeah, because they are frozen to the bone. It's all perspective. Oh, 29 below centigrade. Would that be a little chilly for you then, Aaron?
That'd be like a horror movie level of cold for here.
Yeah, I've had to work outside in those temperatures. That's where you learn the power of layering. the power of beards and mustaches, and you get icicles on your eyebrows and stuff, eyelashes from the steam off your eyes. You can actually reach and pull them off. Yeah. Good times. But I tell you what, I've learned one thing. I used to make fun of the expression, it's a dry heat. One summer in mid-Texas taught me the value of that expression, because it was hot here. We had almost 70 days over 100. So you kind of get used to it in a bit. But then I went up to Minnesota, 92 degrees with the humidity up there was worse than 102 in Texas. Yeah. But I will always say, if I have to choose between scorching heat and cold, I'll take the cold, because when it's scorching hot, I can only take off so much clothing before someone's offended. And when it's cold, I can find clothing and some more clothing and realize that I just got to get up and get moving and stay out of the wind, if possible. So, which leads us to the next topic I set up, which is herpes and holidays. And I'm sure somebody out there is going, is he saying holidays cause herpes? No. So stop typing. Stop. This one, because I've worked, dated in the medical industry and saw enough of these, especially now with what I'm doing, I've had a number of clients who have HSV 2 and 1, and wintertime, holiday season is the number one time that they have major breakouts. And those of us in our industry are finding out it's true enough to be true that the number of breakouts can be controlled not only by medicine like acyclovir or Famvir or all of the generics that they have it, but a lot of the breakouts are fueled by the energies of anger, frustration, and I had them all, and then the squirrel took them away. I'll get back to that, but what they found is the people that get it and are so angry at the person who gave it to them are typically the ones that have the most breakouts. As soon as they can get over that and accept it and move on, all of a sudden the breakouts magically disappear. And I was a co-mediator for a support group for 14 years and found out a lot of stuff that is not properly represented on the internet. Because of course, most people, when they get it, first place they go to the internet, see the pictures, and then the support group, first thing we tell them, don't look at the pictures online. Don't. These are the cases where even the doctor's going, whoa, nurse, could you give me the camera? Oh, no, you're fine. Nothing. It's normal. We just want to document for your Yeah. No, the high resolution camera. Yeah, those are the pictures that end up on the internet. What they don't put out there is up to what HSV1, which is the one responsible for cold sores, is probably the number one found antibody in humans on the planet. But it's been so easily written off. Most people that have it don't know where they got it, because when they were a little baby, Aunt Hilda, oh, look at the pretty baby, oh my God. And she had a little pre-breakout. Baby had chapped lips. All of a sudden, baby gets a little cold sore, and they blamed it on the bottle, the nipple on the bottle. After a bit, baby has built up enough antibodies to control the breakouts. But you see where do you see, many breakouts? When I was taking care of college rental houses, yeah, about midterms, all of a sudden there are so many students walking around with a cold sore, even though it's not winter. Stress, anxiety, depression, frustration, anger. And this fuels them, but it's written off as just cold sore. Part of why I'm bringing this up now, especially up here in the northern hemisphere, now that we're moving into winter, where people are bound inside, less sun, less fresh air, stressed out because of the rels and the stores and all the fun that goes with the holidays. And yesterday when I was at the grocery store, there's a mommy walking around with 3 kids and a honking cold sore. And I'm like, yep, 'tis the season for giving. At least the majority of the people with HSV2, which is also herpes, the main differentiating between 1 and 2 is 1 tends to be above the waistline, above the neckline. 2 tends to be below. So those with 2 could say that they're luckier because not many people get to see the breakout, but it tends to be more painful. So pick your poison. The good thing is it doesn't kill you, except in very, very extreme rare cases, which unfortunately is why they're not investing money into a cure. Since the early 70s, the cure has been right around the corner. We've almost got a cure. And there have been all sorts of snake oils and all sorts of things that have been the cure. Well, with the number of population in the world that has type 1, and the number of population that has type 2, when there's an actual cure, the world will know. So if you know anybody that has found out they're getting it, or they've got it, or they're worried about it, either have them, plant-based, vegan, and fasting, the cure for pretty much anything, and controlling anger, anxiety, and all of those types of energies. And I didn't plan on this to be a talk about this, but it's such a prevalent issue, and especially for any of you that are dealing with clients that are dealing with this. One of my clients I've mentioned before was brutally raped when she was 17, left for dead, took her virginity, and gave her herpes. And of course, she was carrying around the anxiety and the anger and all of that stuff. So she'd pretty much been having breakouts pretty much the entire time. And for women, it also, a lot of times, accompanies their period. Just to add to the fun. A little reminder of days gone by. But once we went in and got rid of all of those energies, she said she hasn't had a breakout since. Am I saying that she found the cure? I can't. But I can say she's now living an entirely different life, married, has a kid. And yes, if anybody's watching the recording, is it safe to have a kid when you have herpes? I can unquestionably say within certain parameters, absolutely yes, or there would be the amount of issues that we would know about with the amount of people that have it, you would know. The only time that there's an issue with birth with herpes is when the female contracts it in the 3rd trimester, because her body has not built up the antibodies to properly share enough with the baby to protect it during normal vaginal birth. So that was a whole lot of information that I've just kind of thrown out at you. Anybody got any questions, as long as we're going along?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't even on mute. Yeah, if you can go into forgiveness on that one, because I would have a very difficult time with that one.
There's a couple of different approaches on forgiveness. Again, forgiveness doesn't forgive the act. Forgiveness is for you, not for the person that did it. When it comes to helping clients out with forgiveness for herpes and things of that nature, part of it is down to the fact that up to 70% of the people that have herpes don't know they have it, either through misdiagnosis, through lack of breakouts. A lot of times what will happen, like I said, with HSV1, where the kid, the baby is 3 months old, Aunt Hilda gives her, and if your name's Hilda, this is not about you, I promise. It just popped in there. But so they've had it since they were an infant and haven't had a breakout sense because, or if they did, it was just a very mild cold sore. When they get HSV2, because they're so similar, oftentimes the symptoms are so mild that they're written off. I got the flu. Little achy, didn't feel good, da-da-da. No major breakouts. A lot of times women will miscue it for a yeast infection. And because of the length of time of the symptoms, they have some issues. They go get their favorite treatment. Within 7 days, it's cured up. And a lot of times for gynecologists, a little cue for them is when a woman comes in for unusually high numbers of yeast infections. And they'll run a blood test for antibodies. And for the people that, well, I get an STD test every year. That's good. The only problem is herpes is not on the everything test. And they're like, what? And a couple of reasons for that are, one, the cost. Two, because according to Dr. Terry Prevalence, who also was the mediator at the support groups once a month, they can't pinpoint how long a person's had it. The tests are not 100% accurate. And for some reason, people seem to have a much higher psychological issue with finding out they have herpes than if they find out they have AIDS. Yes, and that caught us off guard too. She said the only way that she could explain it is because of the world outpouring for AIDS victims and the amount of research going in to take care of it and how far they've come with treatment for it, the people that find out they have AIDS are like, ugh. All right. But because the part of what I added to the explanation for the herpes reaction, the herpes virus travels up and down the nerve trunks. Well, when you're dealing with nerves are conductors of energy, electrical impulses. All nerves are connected to the brain. And this is just a hypothesis. If you completely disagree, thank you, but I've witnessed enough to make enough sense. When they find out that they have something like that, it hits them so emotionally and supercharges the energies that Dr. Terry said there were times where people would sit in the room crying for a half an hour because they found out they had herpes. And in that time, she had already told somebody they have AIDS, and they were like, all right, what do I do? And they were gone 20 minutes ago. And I happened to witness one firsthand a number of years ago. because I was, again, dating in the medical field, I went to go see go to see my girlfriend at the time. And I happened to hear, shall we say, an outburst in one of the rooms, and I recognized the voice. And all of a sudden the door slammed open and out went one of my good friend's girlfriend's mother. And what had happened is my friend, who took her virginity, and she was the second woman he slept with, gave her herpes, and she had the traditional massive first outbreak. So the lineage was super easy to track. My friend goes back to the lady who took his virginity and is like, and she was like, well, I wasn't having an outbreak, so you should have been fine, which is what they taught back then. And his girlfriend's mother, I heard the exchange, called her names, accused her of being some very nasty things. And so her mother didn't see me sneak in and tell her it's not true, all the above, you can get help. So if you're in the industry, I've had probably a dozen clients now, easily, that have come to me for that. The other thing you'll need to know to help them with is it takes a lot of work to share herpes. And there's a lot of fear based around it, especially people that aren't educated about it. We had one guy that came in, and he was absolutely devastated. His children would not bring his grandchildren over to see him anymore because they thought he was mentally unstable, because he knew in his mind that anything he touched had herpes on it now. And anybody that touched it afterwards was going to get herpes from him. And so his apartment smelled like a bleach bomb went off on it every day. And if he knew his kids were coming, in his mind, the only way to kill the herpes was for him to literally almost wash his hands in bleach and wipe everything down. And when Dr. Terry explained to him that the only way herpes is a very fragile virus. It doesn't survive long at all in the open. On your skin, on hard surfaces, you can't get it from a toilet seat. You can't get it from the sink handles. It's transmitted by parts on parts, rubbing, with vulnerable parts being touched by infected parts. So the person who has herpes has to have either an outbreak or has to have it's been a while since I've had to talk about this stuff. Shedding, where they don't realize that they're actually shedding the virus. They have to have shedding going on, and the person that they're with has to have vulnerable parts, broken irritated skin, which is why Terry always talked against people shaving and getting all slicked up for the date, because the razors cause micro abrasions, which gives you thousands of nice little openings for the virus to transmit in, which help boost up all sorts of STDs. And she used to go off on a tangent now that guys are manscaping, because now it's even worse. So when we get back to the forgiveness part of the question is, did you partake in consensual sex? Did you take your clothes off and have sex? Well, if you did, there's a risk that goes with that regardless. If it was non-consensual, that's a whole different topic, whole different subject, and that can be worked on there. And then there's, you did the best you could at the time with the tools, knowledge, and energy you had available to you. If you would have known you were going to get this, obviously you would have made a different choice. Second, doesn't kill you. It simply, for most of the people, once they reframed it, realized that it made them take better care of themselves. Because a lot of the triggers for an outbreak are lack of rest, poor diet, stress. Well, if you can get proper rest, stop eating junk food, and lower your stress, that's good for you regardless of your environment, your body condition, or what you're dealing with. The other thing that we teach people is, anytime you do have a breakout, look back at the last 2 weeks. What changed? What's different? And you'll start finding out triggers. Some people have different triggers. For some people, it's excess heat. For some people, it's foods high in arginine. And there was a study put out that showed the benefits of lysine, where they took live cultures and put them into environments high in arginine, high in lysine. The lysine ones didn't fare well. The ones in arginine did a little better. The problem is arginine is found in all sorts of things that are good for you. It's found in nuts and legumes and all of that. And some people that are so desperate to find answers will go and swing the pendulum so far. One of the attendees saw the list about the different foods and everything, and saw that was it poppy seeds were on there as well. And every morning, for as long as he could remember, he enjoyed a poppy seed muffin with his breakfast. And so he's like, oh yeah, poppy seed muffin, and he put peanut butter on it. And both of those were on the arginine side. And he's like, oh, that's it, oh my gosh. So he totally quit that. And he said after about a month, he was having breakouts because he was so stressed out because he was missing his little breakfast routine that he went back to it, and his breakouts stopped. So it wasn't those, but it stressed him out enough to make him realize, so have your clients keep track of what's been going on. Have they been stressed or worried about anything in particular? What's changed? That'll help them get a better grasp on it. And I know I've thrown a lot at you guys. Any questions? I know that Holly, you were about to ask a question there.
Oh yeah, I just had a quick question. Do you know if anybody's tried Bankston image cycling on it, and if that's had any effect?
I'm sorry, you cut out just as anybody.
Oh, of course. Do you know if anyone's tried Bankston image cycling to try to help with the herpes, and if so, what effect it had?
That is an awesome question that I don't have an answer for. Anybody? I think that would be a good approach. And it would be a good approach to share with the community if you get any particular results with it. I would expect that it would. Any other questions?
I don't know about Bankston. I know Bankston is still a little tricky for me, even though I've listened to it a couple of times, but I do think that is a great question.
So another thing that we can do is across the board, help our clients with tools to help prep themselves for the upcoming holidays. How to deal with stress, what's important, chunking down priorities and all of the above, strictly to help them be better prepared for their mental health going into these. So, any more on that? That gives me about 8 minutes for the last subject. The last subject, the power of the letter Y, was a quick download with a session I had with a client today. And as I'm typing in notes, I had typed in, she had mentioned something about yourself, and I typed ourself. Going, oh, forgot a letter. And the difference between ourself and yourself is why. And why is it important to differentiate and look at the difference between ourself and yourself? Was being able to separate yourself from the old stories that were given to you about who you are. Whether it's from mom and dad, your best friends growing up, your teachers, whatever, at some point, you have to step back and evaluate yourself separate from the group. Who do I want to be? Who have I become? And who are they demanding that I continue to be that is no longer who I am? As much as I love going back home to my small town of 187 people, and if you're watching this recording and you're from there, yes, I love you. I adore you. I just don't fit in that town right now anymore. Some people, I've got some friends that grew up that still live there. In fact, I know a few of them that are living in the house they grew up in. And thank God, it helps me go back home. because I know that I can drive there and know who to expect out in the front yard. But I have to, it helps me do a self-reflect going, do I fit in that box anymore? That box is a little, I've grown many different ways and shapes and sizes since then. Anybody relate? Any ahas, epiphanies, things you'd like to share on that one?
So it's kind of random, but hopefully you can hear me. So I am always interested in the meaning of the letters. So Y being a yod, I just kind of looked it up, and I thought it was really interesting because the meaning of that word in the Hebrew alphabet, some of the meanings are responsibility, higher level of activity, and deeds. So thought that fit pretty well.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to chime in, please?
Yeah, that experience that you just talked about, I didn't go to what would be called like a hometown situation, but I just got back from overseas, and one of the destinations was seeing my sister in Scotland, and I noticed the same thing in the sense that because you can talk about sort of spatial anchors in terms of like things in your house that you kind of respond to when you come into your house, and they sort of have routines connected to them that you kind of follow automatically and things like that. But there's also sort of lifestyle anchors and things like that, and I was sort of struck by how many of those got stripped away simply because I wasn't in my normal environment, even down to things like the clothes that I wore almost didn't seem to make sense in this new space and things like that. So yeah, it was really interesting seeing it from having that experience and sort of starting to understand how much stuff sort of affects us on a level that we're not aware of until we're sort of taken out of it.
Exactly. And that was the whole gist of it when I was helping my client walk through some changes and being sad and frustrated that members of her group, her friends and stuff, she can't hang around with anymore because she's no longer that person. And I was like, yeah, and it's simply the difference between why are things different? And when you step back and analyze it, you don't necessarily require an answer. Sometimes it's just the acknowledgement that things have changed, that you've outgrown an environment, you've moved on, you've moved forward, and as long as you're moving up instead of down, or
Yeah, because there's two sides to it, right? One is having the self-awareness to understand that you've changed, and then also when you're in a situation where there's other people that are responding to you in old ways or sort of haven't updated their version of you, there's almost, I don't want to say the word war, but like there's a battle of frames or mindset.
yes,
in terms of they're going to treat you in a certain way which could bring out a behavior in you, and you've got to kind of go, no, I'm not that anymore. I need to override this and show you that I am this way now, and sort of have them be able to hopefully accept it. Maybe you need to do it gradually so that they, it's not a 180-degree shift and they can't relate to you anymore. But yeah, it's a bit of a, requires some state control, I think.
And while you were talking about that, I caught a squirrel running across the road, and we go through so many identity changes through life. And some of them, our tribe can come with us easily on, and some not so much. You see a number of people that they've got their tribe and everything, and then all of a sudden they find somebody and they get married, and their tribe puts their face on a milk carton because they've completely changed in a different fashion. And then all of a sudden they're hanging out with more people who are also married. And then, of course, you get the ones that all of a sudden they get divorced and they have to decide, well, is it your friend or my friend or our friends or da da da? And they have to go off and find another tribe, or the empty nesters that are dealing with the people that have the new kids, and they're like, yeah, we're kind of over that whole 3 and 4-year-old kids running around. We just got rid of our last one, and we didn't realize how much it stresses us out. So we'll see in about another 15 years. But that brings us up to the top of the first hour, which is when I step back a little bit and allow open mic, open platform. If you guys have any thing that you'd like to share or have questions on, or would a topic you would like addressed, and we'll let all the people that are here chime in and help with. Anybody got anything for tonight?
Well, there's only 3 of us on screen, right? So I better say something. One thing that I've had on my mind to ask you about for a long time, because I haven't been on this for a while. You've talked about sports performance before, and particularly, was it Babe Ruth? I think you were talking about how he could like magnify the size of the ball in his mind, so that when he kind of swung at it, it was, like a basketball rather than a baseball size, and therefore was sort of much easier to hit. So with that in mind, I'm going to say, because of my nephew, but I've gotten into playing Fortnite, on PlayStation sort of thing, and a lot of that is tracking objects and hand-eye coordination, and particularly hitting different parts of the character have different scores and that sort of thing. And so I'm wondering if there's some sort of an application for a similar technique in terms of training yourself to align this crosshair with this object, and sort of train yourself there. Have you got any thoughts on ways to do that outside of just mental rehearsal?
Well, anybody else want to chime in? This is the part where I let anybody else with ideas chime in. Anybody want to chime in before I give my 2.5 cents? Going once, going twice. When it comes to live sports, I have applications. I don't have a whole lot of experience in video games because I can barely play Pac-Man. But in that part, I think part of it would be the perception of time. If you do timeline manipulation, if you could figure out whether you need to speed up time to make the game appear to be running slower, of course, you know what happens then. All of a sudden you look up and 3 hours have gone by, and you've got 3 hours left to sleep. But that would be one thing I would try. The other part would one of the things I do with my athletes is I have them study a skeletal and a muscular chart to have them visualize the machine that they're operating. And with video games, you can hyper focus on what's all connected that are operating the controllers, and how can you empower them to maximize them to operate even quicker. Quicker response times, all the above, would be one thought.
And in thinking about it over the weeks, I'm reminded of your story about the it was, I guess it was Formula One maybe, or NASCAR pit
Yes,
crew, right?
NASCAR.
And the idea of sort of slower and smoother adding up to faster, even though you're not, even though the goal is not about speed or intensity or quickness.
Yes, how smooth can you make the operation? It's no longer about the muscle and the force behind it. It was how smoothly can you let your body flow and roll with. And they started working together as an orchestra instead of a bunch of solo artists jamming out. Another thing, like with baseball, is allowing the people that are going to be batting, well, any of the players, is to have them sit for a little bit and watch people throwing the ball, to start focusing on the threads on the ball as it's being thrown, which trains their eye to start tracking not a round sphere, but the details in the ball, to make them hyper aware. And then a couple of the clients I worked with, is I had them change the location of their targets that they were throwing at, and when they were throwing at somebody's glove, instead of this being the target right here, the target got moved a foot back behind the glove. So they were throwing into a tube, and that increased their accuracy. And for the batters, it was the desire was, how do they want to slice the ball with the bat? Are you looking to cut the bat in, or the ball in half? If your bat was a samurai sword, how do you want the ball to react? Where do you want it to go? And now instead of having this much surface area of the bat, you're envisioning that much surface area like a sword. And if you can cut it directly in half, you've delivered maximum power, if that's what you need. If you're looking for a base run and you cut the top third of the ball off, now it'll hit down hard and bounce high. So it started changing their vision from large globes to more precise items. It's a lot of reframing stuff, but finding stuff they can work with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That concept of, it has been repeating through all the ones you say, almost like a scope change like you say in the reframing, instead of it being a sphere, it's a fraction of a sphere, or it's a part of an object, or to flip it around, like you say, the bat is smaller, and so that sort of gives you ideas about gradations of position rather than sort of just two things that can collide, sort of thing. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Holly?
Some things TJ said made me think of a few things too. So when like people are playing the piano or dancing, and they get to a certain point of proficiency, the number one thing that seems to help people get to the next level is learning how to relax. So relaxing the fingers. So I don't know if you've heard of the Alexander technique. That's a complete thing about posture, about breathing, all of that kind of goes in. And I mean, it's a very similar movement to working on a controller versus playing a piano or playing the violin or, whatever instrument it may happen to be. So a lot of it is just like TJ was saying, the smooth movements, but also that deep breathing, proper posture in the rest of your body. And then the other thing that came to me was, if you want to be a really good athlete, if you want to be a really good, golf player, watch a lot of Tiger Woods and then download everything that he's doing. Allow your mind to just record, step into his avatar, notice how he's feeling. I think the same thing could also work with video games. If you find some of the best players in the world, watch them play for a little while, and some of them will even do commentary of, this is why I did this, this is why I did this. So just some things that kind of popped into my head.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Oh, and yeah, the thing about that you said about the either slowing down or the smoothness, but TJ said it as well. And yeah, because when you get into the high pressure part, there is a tendency to just flick or pull, or kind of, it's, becomes almost like an instinctive fight or flight thing, rather than if you can just kind of calm down, then all of a sudden you can become, have smoother movements, and your aim comes back rather than overshooting or undershooting and things like that. Yeah.
Just a quick statement on that. The way you're doing it wrong, this piano or a video game controller, if you're feeling a lot of tightness in here, either while you're doing it or afterwards, you're not using your hands right.
Yeah, true.
And it's funny because the college houses, when it became an online, were you saying something, Lenora? Oh no, please go ahead, because we can't. It showed that you unmuted.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'll put it in the chat. It's okay. You're good. College houses.
Well, when those games went online virtual, and anybody could play with anybody, well, pretty soon I'd have, out of my 72 rentals, I would have 4 or 5 houses playing against each other. And they would, they've all got their mics on. And it's funny listening to the audio in the other room to tell you how their playing was going at the moment. And I can't use the exact words that they were using because we're trying to keep this online. But if the word was flip instead of something else, it'd be like, oh, flip, 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 oh, flip, 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 ah! Flip, Eddie, flip, 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 flip. I'm gonna walk over to his house and kick him. Like, yeah, that sounds like a great time. What happened? Oh, nothing. I got ambushed. I'm like, oh yeah, that sucks. So you might want to also work on breathing techniques. There we go. Look at that pretty face joining us. Hello, darling. Well, you missed the topic of becoming an expert video game player.
Well, it kind
To
of
be fair-
reflects life, and life reflects the video games.
I was going to say, to be fair, all I have to do is to be good enough to beat an 8-year-old or 9-year-old. So
Oh,
the
good
level is
luck.
lower. The level is lower than best in the world. But
8-year-olds are usually pretty good.
yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Their brain, when they're doing it while their brain's developing, their brain literally becomes a game playing machine, and so they, it's all just kind of hardwired in. Whereas for us slightly older people, it's I don't know, we have to brute force it into them maybe.
You weren't born to it. They were.
Well, I mean, I guess I sort of was, but it's not to the same degree as, it was much simpler back even when I was playing as a kid. Yeah.
Well, that kind of ties into my whole constant training of who's the expert. The expert's the person that's half a step or a step ahead of you, regardless of age. In fact, I was talking to my uncle today about he's finally getting his old grandma's old TV finally died. I mean, it's only like 40 years old. And so he had to get one of them new smart TV things, but he is so anti-technology that he's weirded out about, well, am I going to be able to see the local news? Well,
My grandma's TV had a little lizard that died in it. So every time you turned it on and it warmed up, you got the smell of the lizard. So it got called a smelly vision.
needed better seasoning. Which also, I remember back when VCRs came out and we were selling them, and we always got the call that my VCR is blinking 12 o'clock again. How do I set that? I'm like, do you have any grandkids coming to visit in the next couple of days? Oh yeah, my 7-year-old will be here on Friday. I went, they can set it for you. Oh yeah, you're right. Thank you. So we've got we have 43 minutes left. What do you guys want to talk about? What got any questions, topics you want to bring up? Come on. I know you guys collect questions during the week. Yes, Lenora?
Totally guilty. And I actually just messaged this to Holly. I sometimes get so focused on the trance work that I forget the other external stuff that you can implement in your everyday life. I just kind of forget that that's just as equally important. A group open discussion on increasing your own perception and thought process of your own worth. And it kind of gets fuzzy when you think, no, I'm worth it and I deserve it. But then you almost come across like you're better than other people. And that's not what it's going for. So any general clarity on that or thoughts on that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Okay, peeps, help her out.
So, Lenora, can you repeat just that last part?
No. Rewind.
Can you're unconscious now repeat that last part? So working on your self-worth, right?
Yes, raising your own level of self-worth and deserving, but not coming across like you're better than other people, because it's not about being better.
How does raising your self-worth relate to anyone else?
Because if you think like, oh, I'm worth it, I'm worth such and such that I'm going after, or I deserve it, you almost look around and you're like, well, don't other people deserve it too? Aren't they worth it too? Aren't they worthy of it too?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like the oxygen in the airplane. You've got to give it to yourself first before you can look after other people. So I think you have to embrace it, even if you think you're getting a bit big-headed or whatever, because if you don't project it, they're not going to see it and they're not going to believe it. You have to project that. And you need to project it for you, because it's how you can be the person they need you to be.
I am writing. Thank you, Fran. That was a great one.
I've said this stuff a million times before, but I'll repeat myself again too. But I sometimes think, well, first of all, and this is kind of similar to what Fran was saying, but when you deny yourself, remember that concept of rapport. If you don't lead by example, if you're not worth it, how are they going to see that they're worth it? But if you do lead by example and see that you're worth it, they'll see they're worth it too. Because the truth is, they are worth it. You being worth it doesn't make them not worth it. But another one that I always go back to when it comes to, humility and pride is I always say that it's all about that perspective of, if you look at let's say you have somebody who has an IQ of 70 and you have somebody who has an IQ of 312, and you graph those on a graph and you zoom in on just those two, they look like they're really, really far apart. But then if you were to imagine, you could, for those who are religious, they could think of God or, whatever. But for those who are not religious, a theoretical person who knew everything there was to know in the world, what would their IQ be? They could do everything. They were this, they literally could do everything. Their IQ would probably be, what, 1 million? Look at the graph when you put 1 million on there, and then you've got 312 and you've got 70. Like, you can't even see the difference between the two. So I think we need to compare. It's good to know where we're at, because we got to compare ourselves to where we want to go. It's not wrong to compare, but if you ever lose sight of that, that these are minuscule differences and they don't make me a better person in any way, shape, or form. As long as you don't lose track of that, it's totally fine. It's when you lose track of that and you look at it and magnify it and say, oh, look how much smarter I am. Look how much more of a hard worker I am. Look how much more enlightened I am. It's, if you zoom out, you really aren't that much. And you're at a different point. If you've been going for, 30 years and they've only been going for 5 years, you better be, ahead if you were given a lot more advantages, So it's useless to compare to others unless it is simply just to give ourselves feedback about where we're going, where we've been. And also if they've asked for it, because they're trying to figure out where they and who they've been and who they want to be. So,
and remember,
big long thing. I know I've said it before, but
remember your power as a creator. What you believe becomes reality in your world, and the sphere that you influence around you. You really do create your own reality. And if you're playing at that big when you should be playing at magnificent, how's it going to affect your world and the people you're dealing with, particularly your clients? They need to believe in you. So, be the big, be the better, need to be better. If you have any ideas of help.
My turn now. What are your intentions with the things that, if you got all the things that you thought you didn't deserve, that were beyond what you think you deserve, what would be your intentions with those? Now, if your intention is to destroy the world and destroy people, you probably don't deserve that. If your intention is to continue to be a caring, loving, giving person, then worrying about whether or not you deserve that cup of water out of the ocean that the universe has available for you is the wrong thing to worry about. You should be worried about how big of a bucket can I get so that I can help more people than I ever thought imaginable. I've often used the scenario of money makes you more of who you are. If you're a caring, loving, kind, loving person, more money makes you more of a caring, loving, kind person. If you're a complete narcissistic a-hole, more money makes you more of a narcissistic a-hole. Being we know that you're not one of those, and that you're a loving, kind, caring person, and the people that we work with that come to us typically want to be better people. If you had the money to do things like be in the checkout lane at the grocery store and witness the single mom trying to figure out what she's going to have to put back because she doesn't have enough money that week to buy everything that she needs, and you could simply slip the cashier $200 and say this money goes towards the single mom, and walk away, not because you needed the glory, but because $200 was the cup of water out of the ocean that she didn't have, then manifest that. Make it happen, and don't think about, I don't deserve this, because you do. You deserve it because all the people around you deserve what it will allow you to become and do.
It's the doubts that make us small.
Yes.
This may be slightly cryptic, but I think Lenora will know what I mean, because TJ is saying that she's whatever his words was, loving, caring person. Any of those words apply. It doesn't matter exactly specifically what they are. But I think that the fact that she is that is why she has the problem that she just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And because, words like deserving and worth are, first of all, just labels and don't really actually mean anything, but they sort of linguistically also apply comparison and things like that. So we're using words to talk about feelings. And so it's easy to say, well, they're just labels, just ignore them. But we can't practically kind of do that usually. But my point being that we go throughout life with a map in our minds of how the world is, and somewhere in that is a little rule about this is what I'm worth or what I deserve, kind of coded in a feeling way within you. And so when I heard you ask that question, what I heard was, I have a little rule in my head or my body or my heart or somewhere that says I can have this as long as it's not more than what someone else has, or some sort of a balancing scale internally. So to leap it all the way back to the initial question, my train of thought would be, where did that little rule come from in the first place that kind of got set up? Because I think rethinking that would rebalance things.
And remember the programming you probably had when you were little from your mum saying, don't be big-headed, don't boast, other people don't like that, all that sort of stuff. And Aaron, could I get you to talk about the little story about the kids that were praised at school and the kids that were told they were dumb?
I guess. I mean, I can't remember the exact thing, but if we just take it as a story rather than a thing, but I think it was a real thing that happened. But let's just say it like this: they did a study, whether it was true or not, where they had one class, and they told the teacher these students are high achievers, and then they had another class where they told the teacher these students are underachievers or they struggle in the learning, the truth being that they were just a normal sampling of of students. And at the end of the year, the ones that were in the high achieving class scored higher, and the ones that were in the underachieving quote unquote class scored lower. So it kind of came down to the takeaway being that the perception that the teacher had on the performance that the students were able to achieve in the end affected what they actually achieved, because it affected their behavior and the way they treated the student and the way that they taught the student. So again, applying
That's
internal
right. You got it.
values outside.
Got that spot on. I heard the same story once too. So good memory for when you were sure. I'm just going to quickly too. This is maybe a little bit more harsh of a way, and this applies to everybody, but I'm going to direct it at Lenora right now, but it definitely applies to all of us. Just
I love that it came with the precursor of this might be harsh.
We'll just give Lenora a little quick hug before you say that.
Next time that voice comes up and says, you don't deserve this, you're going to respond to, oh, really? So my friends, including people like Holly, don't deserve to know the best version of me because I refuse to embrace who I should be, because they don't deserve to know that.
Or ask that voice, and because if you don't really believe it, what else you got?
As long as we're all having fun with this, compared to what?
I think Lenora's having fun with it.
Yeah. You got to ask yourself, compared to what? I don't deserve this compared to what? Well, compared to blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you know that they deserved it? You know, a lot of us were raised with the, well, what do you think? Money grows on trees. If everybody jumped off the cliff, would you do the same? Well, thanks for the limiting belief stuff, but there's a ton of stuff out there. There's a lot of money in this world. I mean, drug dealers have houses with rooms filled with $100 bills. There's not a shortage of money out there. There's not a shortage of resources.
Is that called hoarding when you have your house full of $100 bills?
Go what?
Is that called hoarding?
Yes. I should do more hoarding like that. I'd like to hoard some $100 bills. But I think, again, it comes down to analyzing the story. Going back to the last subject we talked about, the power of why. Why am I different than the others? Why should I be allowed to stand out from the others? Do I deserve to stand out from the others, whether it be beauty or smarts or access to school or college, or do I deserve to have a better car than the others? Do I deserve to have more money than anybody in my family ever has? Do I deserve to have a better house than anybody in my family ever has? Do I deserve a better education than anybody that my family ever has? Why not?
And what would you advise a client who came to you with this problem?
Which one, me?
No, sorry, Lenora.
Thank you. That's why I asked.
You could chime in, TJ. It's okay.
You got it.
And it sort of ties back to what we were talking about before about either spatial, or I'm just going to call it spatial anchors because I don't have a better term, but even if you, in growing up, there wasn't a specific moment where you got some sort of a incorrect message of this is what you are worth, and that got installed, and now you can't get past that ceiling. Even just things like the way you grew up program in a certain thing where you go, well, this is what life is. You live in a house like this. And so the idea of not being in that and having a house that's bigger or having a car that's different or that's something that doesn't match what's familiar to your map, therefore becomes foreign, and you're almost, even though on some level you might want it, you're kind of repelled, as for some reason is the word that comes to mind, but another part of you pushes away and kind of goes, I kind of like the idea of that, but I'm actually uncomfortable at the same time. So it's interesting to think that even without something directly relating to that happening, that you just sort of get installed mindsets of worth and deservingness to misuse labels again.
Did you get enough answers for?
Yes, thank you, my sweet friends.
Anybody got anything else for the next 24 minutes? I know there's another question in there somewhere.
Fran just unmuted.
It wasn't me, it was my unconscious.
That's right.
Come on, folks, this is your time. Really? I know somebody's got notebooks and.
Well, I do, but I know Fran wants to and is fighting it. But I'll go if no one else says something. I'm just waiting to see. All right, Fran can go later.
Okay, hold on. Divine intervention.
Okay.
2 quotes for the last question. And I'm going to switch this one. I'm going to read the original quote, and then I'm going to reframe it the way I saw it. Only when your memories are more important to you than your goals are you old. I'm probably going to butcher the name, Nito Cuban. Only when your memories are more important to you than your goals are you old. Only when your perception of who you should be is more important to you than your goals. Second one, if you raise your children to feel that they can accomplish any goal or task they decide upon, you will have succeeded as a parent, and you will have given your children the greatest of all blessings. Brian Tracy. So I'll read it again. If you raise your children to feel that they can accomplish any goal or task they decide upon, you will have succeeded as a parent, and you will have given your children the greatest of all blessings. Now here's the twist on it. If that wasn't your parents, you still get to do it. As soon as you're over the age of 18, you can fire your parents and still love them because they did the best they could at the time with the tools, the knowledge, and the energy they had available to them. If they could have done better, they would have. Now it's up to you. Take the ball and run. Blow their minds, even if they try and hold you back because they're afraid that you're going to accomplish way more than they ever dreamed. Go out and do it. Become the first multi-billionaire in the family heritage. become the first one in the family heritage to create a business as big as Google. Why not? Look at where some of those things started. Where did Microsoft start? And a garage. Where did $5 start? And a little coffee shop in Seattle. Well, you ever go there and try and spend less than $5? Yeah, it's $5.
For a second, I thought you meant like Five Below. I was like,
Yeah,
what's
no,
$5?
$5. But again, can you imagine if either one of those people thought, well, I don't deserve to have a business this big? Why not? Do it better than them, please. The world is begging. So, Aaron, you were about to throw something out there before I had a squirrel throw something on the road for me?
Well, no, that ties in. The divine intervention worked because that second one about kids, because my question was going to be about communicating with kids. Because again, the same nephew, and this is live, but chances are he won't see it, particularly for a number of years. But up until recently, just seeing him, because of the training that we've done and knowing, how inadvertently grown-ups can kind of traumatize kids by doing something or saying something, I got really paranoid about how do I interact in a way that isn't going to kind of mess him up in some way, that 20 years from now, I'm not going to regress him, and he's going to say, Uncle Aaron didn't play Fortnite with me, and and I got really upset, and that kind of thing. I'm joking, but the true part of it was this idea of how do I talk to them, and because there's a fear of if I say this thing or if I put my foot down, he's not going to like me anymore. He's not going to want to talk to me and things like that. And I've since learned they're actually more resilient than that. And you can kind of go, no, that's the line, and they'll go, okay, that's the line. And I think in talking about it with a couple of friends, just realizing even that somewhere along the line, even though on some level you can feel like a kid at heart, that you can kind of forget what it is actually like to be a kid. And because I'll, for example, in spending time with them recently, can kind of come away sometimes and go, oh, I wish I had have talked more, or asked about this and that kind of thing. And I think that's a good instinct, but at the same time, it's an adult instinct. It's sort of, if I'm at a dinner party with adults, my instinct is I should be making conversation, and that's how adults interact. Whereas with a kid, to some degree, they can just be happy that you're doing the same thing that they're doing, or that you're paying attention to them, or something like that. And so I think, in a way, I'm asking a question and I'm answering it as well. But any thoughts people have on I don't know, communicating with kids and understanding the differences between them and our grown-up mindsets would be really interesting to me.
One little thing I want to throw out quick. I didn't realize how blessed I was, where I grew up, because I was free range parented to the nth degree. But the people, my mom's siblings, my aunts and uncles, and the people in town made it clear that I would be treated the age I acted not the age on my birth certificate. And it really drove me to understand that if you act like a bratty little kid, you will be treated like a bratty little kid, and you don't get to hang out with the cool adults. And there'll be some people, well, you gotta be a kid. Don't worry, I had plenty of time being a kid. But I also had the value and the fun and the freedom to want to be around the adults and act like an adult when I was in that environment. And I think that was part of where I learned how to roll and flow chameleon style with being around. And we just had a 13-year-old boy stay with us for 2 weeks. And for the first week, I was so busy working out on a project outside in the shop that just kind of let him do his thing. And Tina spent time with him and took him out and did the touristy things for him. And then on day 7, he kind of screwed up. And that's when I stepped in and gave him a little piece of how I was raised. And he didn't have his electronics for a week. And he had to come down to the shop and hang out with the contractors and myself. And it was made very clear to him that I was going to remind him constantly that he gets treated the age he acts, not the age on his birth certificate. And by day 3, it was first night, he could barely keep his eyes open. Second night, he was working his butt off. And we didn't force labor him. All of a sudden he was like, wait a minute, this is way more fun than the video game I was playing, and learning how to, run an air nailer and a drill and all these things and build things. And at the end of the day, we're like, hey, look what you did. Look what we built. And day 3, Tina said, you want to watch a movie? He's like, nope. I don't want to stay up too late. I get up early because tomorrow we're going to be working on the windows. And after a week, I noticed that we were having conversations adult style because I refused to talk to him like a kid. He knows how to be a kid. That's the easy part. He didn't know how to associate with adults and didn't realize how much fun it was. So that's my 2.5 cents.
I'll always jump in. So I know I've said it a million times before, but there's a really good book. There's a series of books. It's called Boundaries: When to Say Yes, How to Say No by McLeod and Townsend, Joseph Townsend, Henry McLeod. But one of the points they put in there, so, this is just kind of that concept of traumatizing people. And the truth is, when we regress, we find out it may have been something stupid that traumatized us. But you can't go around your whole life trying not to traumatize somebody. First of all, it's impossible, because it could literally be mommy set baby down to go to the bathroom. What's she supposed to do? Never go to the bathroom and carry the baby around 24/7. It's not practical. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes, but kids need to learn that too. They need to learn that human beings make mistakes. They need to learn that the world isn't perfect. But most importantly, they talked about the concept of you never want to harm somebody to avoid hurting them. So hurting is something in the moment, something that's unpleasant, and it might end up being a trauma that maybe we need to clear out later. And fortunately, we have those skills, maybe we even can clear it out later. But do you want a kid that, because you were afraid to tell them no, because you were afraid to send them to bed at a certain time, because you were afraid to ask them to work, do you want somebody that's going to grow up that nobody wants to be around because they're so entitled, so selfish, They don't know how to function in society. It's that case where I didn't want to hurt you ever. I just needed to treat you with kid gloves. And ultimately you turn them into a non-functional adult and you've harmed them way more than you ever would have hurt them in the moment. So anyway, just throwing that out. I said it before, but
I got to add to that real quick, the phenomena of bread of shame. Are you guys familiar with that? And for those that are watching the recording, in case you've never heard of that, it's a phenomena that happens to typically kids who have been given everything. Mom and dad were best friends, not parents. If they wanted it, they got it. And working with college students for 15 years around SDSU, it was pretty easy. I learned to recognize bread of shame well before I knew that it had a name. And you could see it when you'd see this brand new Mercedes convertible in the parking lot. And you'd go in, and it didn't take long to figure out who it belonged to. And more times than not, listening to them talk about their parents was appalling. We're helping them move in, and the way they talk down to their parents and all the above. And it wasn't until I learned bread of shame and the definition of it, I was like, ah! And you could tell the kids who, for lack of really digging down to the very depth of their childhood, I could tell the ones that were raised by parents, whether it be single parents or couples, it was parents. Boundaries, yeah, this is right, this is not. I'm not going to give you your first car. You're going to have to earn it. And it wasn't the prettiest car in the parking lot, but it was taken care of. And that was typically how I knew that the kids paid for the car and it wasn't given to them. It was 10, 12, 15 years old, but it was clean. The inside was clean. They didn't have the best stuff in their room, but it was tidy. They treated me like a human, not like a servant. And those were the kids that I wanted to help. So that's a little bit bread of shame and stuff there. Lenora's got her hand up.
So I work a lot with children, and what I find is appropriate time and place. So when we start from communication, that communication starts in the womb, and it is built upon as they're doing that when they're growing, when they're 1, 2, 3, they're learning different dynamics of how to go from peer to peer to adult, and then from child to adult, and how to shift in those conversations. So what I specifically do is they know there's an appropriate time and place. And I know your nephew's a little bit, he's beyond 4 years old or 5 years old. So they learn that there's appropriate time and place, and they're also experimenting with you and seeing how far they can push you. And that's appropriate for them. And also you showing what is appropriate and what's acceptable, but also, in the middle of a pillow fight or something, knowing, okay, now we're crossing, we've gotten too rough and we need to kick into adult mode to avoid injury. They expect that, and they know that it's not necessarily traumatization from that standpoint, depending on how you respond. I do my best to, one in particular, and it was not even a pillow fight. I was on therapy with him, and somebody did something nice for him, and he didn't say thank you. And rather than going, fine, I'm going to sit here until you say thank you, I explained to him in multiple different ways, there are appropriate times where we say thank you when somebody does something nice for you, and reframing it and offering different stories. So that way he could start to wrap his mind around it, rather than me taking the firmer hand, because it's not going to help the situation. He's only going to offer more resistance. So it just, go by your instincts and I know for you, you don't usually seem like into attack mode immediately. So you're more gentle, but offering that reframe is really helpful, but also letting that authority come out of you is also a really good thing, because they can understand it and they are expecting it from you, just given the sheer fact that you're not a peer. My thoughts.
Just slightly tangential to that parents, going back to Aaron's worry about being remembered as a villain, a part of a parent's job is actually to be the pantomime villain. Everybody needs a focus that they can say, oh, it's all their fault, or blame it on somebody. It's part of our makeup that we need something to blame or something to hate. Being a pantomime villain as a parent, we're doing them a service as well. So it's not all bad. You've got to have a focus to strive to be different from. And that's what happens as a parent. It's part of growing.
And it's funny because I don't have any children of my own that I know of, but I've helped raise plenty of them. And the funny part is, I was probably one of the strictest people they'd been around because of my upbringing. And it was black and white. I didn't allow for the gray area. I didn't try the whole 1, 2, 3 count thing, because that just teaches kids how to count to 2.5. But the kids still stay in touch with me, and the women that I've dated say that to this day they still worry more about what I think of them than sometimes what their actual dads think of them, because I was so, I let them know this is where the line is. It will always be there. You'll always know right where the line is because I'm consistent. And it was funny because a couple of their siblings or whatever who also had kids learned that, and all of a sudden I became the, you better watch out or I'm gonna have TJ come over. And I'm like, no, you don't get to use me as the threat. Use me as the example. Why don't you start treating your kids the way I do? Black and white. They want rules. They want to know where the perimeter is. If there's no perimeter, why should they give a rip? Why should they respect you? They don't have to, because there's no perimeter out there to worry about. So that's my. Huh?
Some of the things that we've been saying too brought a couple other things up for me too. I think it's also important that we remember, like, there's a place where your role is parent, their role is child, but that doesn't make us superior to them in any way. It doesn't make us inferior. That's just the role we're playing in the moment. And sometimes I think it's important to remember they're human beings and to treat them like that, to listen to them, to use the 3 magic questions on them, use the echo talk on them. And part of what came up with that, you want to have clear boundaries, but make sure that they were communicated properly. So 2 stories were coming to my mind. One is there was a girl that the parents worked so hard to teach her to write her name, and they brought her into kindergarten, and they're going to test to see how smart she is, what class she should go in, whatever. So the test was, they brought her in, and the teacher said, pick your favorite crayon and write your name. Pick your favorite color and write your name. And she just sat there and wouldn't do it. And they thought she was being obstinate. And then they got home and they said, why didn't you write your name? And she said, they didn't have a pink crayon. It was just like, she wanted to follow the instructions. And then there was another one. There was a public service ad or something that was from when I was a little bit younger, so I only kind of vaguely remember it. But there was a mom who was telling her daughter over and over again, don't go in the street, don't go in the street. And then she walked out and her daughter was stepping into the street, and she screamed, grabbed her and said, how many times have I told you don't go in the street? And the girl looks up at her in tears and says, Mommy, what's a street? It's so, like, getting that balance of, yeah, if you're being obstinate, I'm going to call you out on it, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to listen to your side and and talk to you. And it's not always going to be discipline. Sometimes it's going to be bonding time. Sometimes there's going to be good times too. So just throwing that up.
Well, that brings us right up to the top of the hour with parenting skills and all sorts of interesting stuff on Triple P number 46. That's why I absolutely adore you folks for spending your time. And as I've said many times before, thank you, thank you, thank you for investing your time here, because it's the only thing I can't give back to you. And I appreciate you taking what I can't give to you and sharing it with me so that we can share it with others. Those of you who have watched the recording, thank you for your time. As always, please share this with as many people as you can. Please leave comments, good or bad. I'm a big boy. I can handle them. I can also delete them. So, but again, I truly want to let you know from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every one of you showing up, allowing me to do this every week, and even on the weeks that I don't do this, for showing up to support those who are kind enough to take my place so that Triple T can. We are almost at a whole year. Like, wow. Yeah, 6 left. Whee! So with that being said, please subscribe, hit the bell, leave comments. Also remember, I do give a free 30-minute consult if you got something that you heard on here that you either want help with or you have questions on. I'm here. And if I can't help you, we have lots of people, as you can see, that I can refer you to make sure that you get the help and the answers to the questions you're looking for. But with that, it's time for me to say adios. Love you all. Hearts and bells. And that's love, not loser. See you
Thank
guys.
you guys for your amazing insight.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.